We've all been there. You show up, you see the technique, you drill the technique. Then during live rolling, it completely disappears. So you add another and another, believing that more options means a better chance at finding the right one, only to get the exact same result. And everyone says to just keep showing up. Drill more and try a little harder. But doing more of the wrong thing just gets you to the wrong place faster. And look, this isn't a dump on drilling. I believe the right type of drilling builds a solid foundation. And for the ecological guys who think they found the holy grail to jiu-jitsu development, they're only answering part of the question and leaving a lot more on the table. And that's what we're talking about today. Why the techniques you've learned keep disappearing at the very moment you need them, and the kind of strategy you need to solve this problem once and for all. Welcome to the Alchemy of Struggle, babe. Today we're going to geek out a bit and talk about what the cognitive science says about your disappearing techniques. Then I'll lay out 3 concrete training practices that fix this problem for me. The beauty of the solution is that there's something for every belt level. From the new white belt with no real technical base, to the person who's been at it for a while and has developed a pretty decent game, and even the upper belt who's entered that refinement phase. I'll also address one of the loudest debates in modern jiu-jitsu, the whole ecological thing. For now, let's start with the actual problem. So why is it that techniques you drilled over and over mysteriously disappear when a real opponent shows up? It's a lot more than memory or mat time. It's something that cognitive science has been measuring for decades. And once you see it clearly for yourself, it stops being so mysterious and frustrating. Too many available options is the first half of the problem. A pair of researchers from Columbia University named Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper first documented this back in 2000, and Barry Schwartz later popularized it as the paradox of choice. Logically, the more options we have available, the more freedom we should have, more tools to fend off and attack, and more chances to find the solution to the 200-pound problem that's smothering you in mount. But it turns out that the opposite is true. In their research, they found that the more options people were presented with, the harder it was to make a choice and the harder it was to make a commitment. Or they would choose and immediately second-guess the decision. This is exactly what happens with you after watching several technique demos. Like a roll I had with a white belt a couple of weeks ago. I had him trapped in a triangle, but I didn't sink it right away because I wanted to see what he would do. And sure enough, he kind of froze for a few seconds. And then to my surprise, he actually started talking his way through the problem. He said, "I'm trying to decide which way to go here." And I told him he had a few more seconds before I closed the window. He took too long to decide, so I sunk in the sub and we reset the round. Afterwards, I talked him through the problem and demoed the counter. But during that trap, he voiced out loud what so many people do internally, trying to decide from a dozen options that the coach just showed him. But too many choices is only half the story. Things get even worse when you add real stress into the mix. A 2023 paper from a team led by Christoph Geisler nails the second half of the problem. How we make choices when under extreme stress. Whether on the mat or in a tense meeting on the job, we tend to revert to automatic learned responses instead of logically thinking our way through a problem. Because that executive function goes on hiatus once we enter the fight or flight mode. So if you haven't trained long enough to build a solid set of tools to draw from, or you haven't done the work to make those tools second nature, your body has very little to work with while getting crushed in side control. Look no further than one of the craziest scenes in any jiu-jitsu academy. 2 new white belts rolling together. A blur of flailing limbs flying in all directions. Because spazzing is all they have to work with, because it's all that they know. Skill isn't just what you can articulate while sitting comfortably on the mat in between rounds. It's what shows up automatically when you don't have time to think. So how does the right thing become automatic? The science has an answer for that too. It's skill consolidation. Skill consolidation is what happens when you practice so many times that your body starts to own it. It's no longer a sequence of steps that you have to think about or talk your way through while caught in an upper belt triangle. It's a single response your nervous system fires on its own. But the best part is that this automatic response generalizes. It shows up in situations that you never even specifically trained for. If you've been training Jiu Jitsu for a few years, you've already experienced this multiple times. Months ago, I was training with a blue belt who was setting up some kind of leg attack. I wasn't exactly sure where he was going at the time, but I knew I did not want to be there. And before I knew it, my body hit a backstep that reset the entire exchange. A movement I developed over years of practice across a variety of different situations. That's consolidation. So the science I've been talking about all this time requires three things: constraint, repeated retrieval, and a level of resistance that forces refinement. These align perfectly with the three practices that I hinted at earlier. The first practice is something that I do in every single class. After a technique is demoed, I'll do the standard couple of reps just to get the basic feel of it if it's something that I'm unfamiliar with. Then I tell my trainer partner to give me a look. A bit of resistance, starting at around 50%. Then I tell him to slowly ramp it up just enough to make it feel more real. Because I remember being a new white belt, drilling a new technique, only to have it completely fall apart when trying to do it live. Because I never even got to see anything close to reality while drilling it. This partially solves that problem. Then when my training partner is doing the move, I also offer a lighter form of defense, working against his real reactions while still allowing him to complete the movement. Getting an early feel for how I would defend it myself moves it from a random technique into something my body actually starts to own. This even works for the newer guy who doesn't have much of a game yet. The second thing that works great for me is positional sparring. I even like it more than live rows most days because I get a lot more out of it. You start from a specific position and go live from there. If you escape or get a submission, you reset from the same position. So instead of 5 minutes of flailing, you get 5 minutes of being constrained in a specific position, working on a specific technique. And here's why it works. Every round is the same starting point with a completely different middle. Repeated retrieval of the same weapon against live resistance under real stress, which is exactly what you need for consolidation. The third practice is the deepest of the three, but also the hardest. This isn't backed by any kind of science or any of the studies that I've mentioned. It's just something I stumbled on in my own training over the past 8 years. And once I started paying attention to what was actually happening, the pieces clicked together in a way that made me think there was something real here. It's what I call the familiar training partner. The guy you've been rolling with for months or years, and who knows your A game inside and out. The stuff that works on everyone else doesn't work on him anymore. But here's what I started noticing. Every roll with that training partner forced me to do one of two things: deepen the technique he was stopping to the point where he could no longer stop it even if he saw it coming, or develop another set of weapons that emerged from that same setup. But this is something that works better for more experienced people. The one who's developed a solid game that's worth defending against, and has hit a wall where every regular training partner has completely neutralized it. What most of us mistake for a plateau. But this is actually a really good sign. It means you finally have a real game that's worth refining. And the training partner who shuts it down is the exact person who will force that refinement. I have a couple of training partners just like this. One of my go-tos these days is a knee bar from the over-under setup. At first, I was hitting this thing on almost everybody, until they caught on. So I adjusted, and then they caught on to the adjustment. So I had to pivot. Now they're so focused on the knee bar that it opens up a pass, which I'm able to hit most of the time because of the knee bar threat. Now I have to address the whole ecological thing, because it's one of the loudest debates in modern jiu-jitsu. The eco crowd will claim that I'm just landing on what they've been talking about all along. And they're right, but only up to a certain point. Live problem solving against resistance does build skill that transfers. better than isolated drilling. The science is strong on those points. But here's the part that the loudest eco advocates completely miss. Other domains have already had this debate long before Jiu Jitsu. In reading, it was phonics versus whole language learning. In math, it was procedural versus conceptual. In foreign language, it was grammar versus total immersion. Even judo was forced to deal with this question. And every single one of those fields landed in the same place. A hybrid model that integrates structured instruction with exploratory learning. Because pure exploration alone misses way too much. You can't build a structure from pieces you don't have. That's why the person with prior experience, wrestling, judo, or other grappling arts, will get the most out of that type of training, while everyone else around them builds an incomplete game. So eco gives you the context, the concept, the navigation, the broad strokes. And escalated drilling gives you the right tools that you'll use inside of that context. Both are absolutely necessary, but neither is sufficient on its own. Now, to be fair, I've never actually trained eco, but I've painstakingly sat through a lot of the debates and dug into some of the research, and I think my analysis still holds. The three practices I just laid out are not pure eco, and they're not pure drilling. They're the integration we reach once we abandon that annoying either-or debate. So that's it. Drilling with escalated resistance. A focus on positional sparring more than live rolling. And a familiar training partner that forces you to deepen and refine your game. Now look, I'm not so arrogant as to believe that I stumbled upon some new breakthrough, or that my solution is the be-all and end-all that's perfect for everybody. But I struggled with the same stuff that many of you are struggling with right now. And this is the solution I found that consistently works for me. You might have something better. And if you do, share it in the comments so we can all learn from your experience. Because this is a community of learners, not a bunch of zealots insisting that their way is the only way. But regardless of your training method, we all need to bulletproof our bodies against injuries and setbacks. And to see how I manage this well into my 50s and remain dominant on the mats, make sure you download the free strength protocol linked in the description. Or if you want access to the full system, the complete mat longevity protocol, that's there too. But most importantly, remember to keep up the good fight and stay safe on those mats.